Mark Golding went to Cooper's Pen in Trelawney and said the previous PNP administration tried to create a community under the Housing Act for the people living there. He said the landowner contested that effort. The matter went to court, and ultimately, the residents did not get protection from the court. That's what he said. But there is a much bigger story behind the judgments of the Supreme Court and Court of Appeal than he would have us to believe. Because when you read those judgments carefully, what you'll discover is that this was not simply a case of a government trying to help residents, a landowner objecting, and the courts refusing to protect them. As a matter of fact, there was already a court judgment where the court made an order ordering the occupants to give up the land. That is a fact. The people who were occupying the land were ordered to pay damages for trespassing to the owner and to remove the structures that they had built on the property and themselves. The attempt to stop the enforcement of that judgment was then refused. And who was it that was trying to prevent the enforcement of the judgment? The Ministry of Housing in 2012 under the PNP administration, as Mark Golding said. And that was their idea of a solution to the problem. And what was the problem? The occupants did not want to leave. They wanted to remain. And so the PNP administration was trying to find a way in which them can stay upon the land, on a land that the court determined belonged to somebody else. The people were told, as was all of Jamaica, that the government was going to buy the piece of land and develop it and put the people on it. This gave the people hope. The people apparently was under the impression that the government and government action was bigger than the court. And the government may well have led them to believe so. The question is, though, was this part of the reason why some were emboldened to go put up concrete structure on a property that don't belong to them? Because when I finish explaining to them in a short while the effect of putting up concrete structure on a property that don't belong to you, they are going to be very, very surprised. If they don't know already, they're going to know shortly. And I wonder, when I saw Mark Golding at that, talking to the press in Cooper's Pen, that the people were behind mumbling and grumbling. I don't know what they were saying, but he was distracted. Right? It would not be a surprise to me if the people in Cooper's Pen did not feel badly let down by government, who promised so much, and then they invested in that promise, and at the end of the day, it came to naught.
I'm visiting Cooper's Pen community today at the invitation of Mr. Dennis Meadows and the team in North Carolina. We know that this particular piece of land has a long history and a complicated legal history. And my role here is not to try and get to the bottom of that today. But what has happened here is a calamity, a humanitarian calamity. And the first priority must be to restore the lives of the households who have had their homes destroyed yesterday.
And here is where we're going to pause as we listen to him. And we're going to examine his words. But what has happened here is a calamity, a humanitarian calamity. And the first priority must be to restore the lives, the households who had their homes destroyed yesterday. Now, Mark Golding is an attorney at law. So too is Isaac Buchanan. So too is Lothan Cousins. And I am quite sure that as attorneys at law, they ought to know that what Mark Golding said here is not true. And to the extent that they know it's not true, and they repeat it nonetheless, then they are lying to the people, and deceiving them. In the clip, you heard Mark Golding refer to what he called households who had their homes destroyed yesterday. So the first thing that we need to establish is who exactly owned those structures that were bulldozed. Everything that happened the other day turns on that. What the law says. It is a law that determines everything. What rights you have and what rights you don't have. It is not what we think and what we believe and how we think it should be that matters, but what the law says. When you hear the people say they want justice, the justice that they say that they want, they understand is about them rights. And what the law says is them rights. They know what the law is. They know when their rights are violated, and so they want it to be corrected. It is all based on what the law says, not what we think. And so we must look at this very important issue of ownership. The ownership of land and what the law says are your rights. But the law also recognizes the rights of occupiers of land if the occupier and the owner is not the same. It is very important that the occupier understands what their rights are, the things that they can do and what they cannot do, and the things that they ought not to do. And it's the things that they ought not to do that we're going to be focusing on today. And this video is particularly aimed at those persons that build up substantial dwelling houses on the Cooper's Pen land. If you know anybody who did so, please send them this video. And if you receive this video from someone, please share it with your neighbors who also build up substantial structures or concrete structures on the land. This is something that you need to know. There is no doubt that you're in big, big trouble, and we don't have a lot of time to figure it out. But I have a few suggestions that I think that you may be able to do in order to save the property. And it's no guarantee, but it will certainly be worth a try. And hopefully you will succeed. And this video is also intended for those persons who may be thinking of squatting on somebody else's land, perhaps with a view of, after 12 years being undisturbed, that you may be able to gain good title, I suppose I call it, by adverse possession. This is something that you need to know. And it is very important that you pay attention to what I'm about to say. The one thing that you ought never, ever, ever to do on somebody else's land. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. That is a fundamental legal principle. Claiming that you didn't know the law and what the law says is no defense in a court of law. You cannot escape or avoid criminal or civil liability by making that claim. And for those persons who from time to time find themselves before the traffic court, I am sure that you probably more than anybody else would experience this. When the judge starts to explain to you where you went wrong. And when you said to the judge, but Your Honor, I never know that. I never know, so, it is interpreted. The judge still fine you. And the reason why the judge fine you nonetheless, even though you did not know, is because of this legal principle. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. And that applies also equally to everything under the law, including property ownership, property occupation, and what you can or cannot do on somebody else's land. To say that you did not know is not an excuse. You just have to lick your wounds and try again, always believing that if you did it once, you can do it again. There is always hope, and this is something that you all must believe in. There is always hope, and there is always hope for human compassion, even in the most disagreeable situation. Never, ever lose sight of that. And even in circumstances where the human compassion is absent, still there is hope. And where is that hope to be found? You have life. Again, if you did it once, you can do it again. This time around, you will make no mistake. I can tell you of a personal situation, somebody that I know who was once married to a man way back in the 70s when the law was a little different. The man had a piece of property that he got from his father. To this day, we don't even know if he had title for it. But that person wanted to live comfortable. So she worked very hard and spent a substantial amount of money building a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house with a porch, living and dining separate. This was a big improvement because what they had before was a pit latrine that they used to have to walk a distance to use. Just like you, she had no idea about property rights. She was married to this person. She did not own the land. All she was thinking about was being comfortable. And so she spent her money, worked overtime to get the money and spent it to build this nice, comfortable home of reinforced block and steel on her husband's land. But at the time, she wasn't thinking about that. What happened in the end? Just a few years later, they separated and divorced. And that young woman got nothing from what it was that she had spent. What did she do? She lamented about her mistake, quarreled with herself even about how foolish she was. And no, it wasn't me. She did not give up. She simply worked hard on her own, and today she have her own apartment, living comfortable. So when I say to you that a mistake that you make, expensive mistake, is not the end, don't go thinking any stupid thing, because if you do, then that will be the end. So don't even allow your mind to go in that direction. Where there is life, there is hope. Let me emphasize, people, I'm not a lawyer, but I have common sense. I can read and I can understand. We are not going to be looking at what the law says about your situation and the structure that you build on that property. Mark Goling, who is a lawyer, who came down there with 2 other lawyers, Isaac Buchanan and Lothan Cousins, ought to have sat you down, if they really care, and explain things to you, and then give you a little advice as to the way forward. They didn't do that because they really don't care what happened to you. They know what your status is because them are lawyers. And yet you heard them with your own ears talking about the households who had lost their homes, destroyed yesterday. So they were not there to tell the people the truth. They were not there to help you or the other poor people either. This was all PR. The man didn't even look like he wanted to be there. It was all about them. Them no business with you. And I have a suspicion that I'm not telling you something that you don't already know. Yes, they don't really care. It's all about scoring political points. What them come with is no solution for you, giving you the false impression and creating the false hope that the government can somehow do something to stop the demolition. Is not going to help you. What it may do, if anything, is make you sit back, relax, and think that all is well. The government, as far as I understand it, has no powers to stop the demolition. So what Mark Goling was suggesting can't help you. You need to stop the moping. You need to stop the fretting. What you need to do is to get up and help yourself. And this is what you need to do. So the first thing you need to know, though, is your status. And from there, we can make a little plan. What you said to that, you agree? Yes. What we're looking at on the screen is a certificate of title for the land that the squatter settlement is on. It is volume 1008, folio 636. That's on the top right. So what we're going to do is read a little bit of what is on the title, and then we're going to look and see what all that means. So it starts by saying, Clive Alexander of the parish of St. Andrew, and he was described as a gentleman, is now the proprietor of an estate in fee simple, subject to the encumbrances notified hereunder in all that parcel of land, part of Orange Grove, in the parish of Trelawney. And then they went on to talk about the size of the property. 284 acres, one road, 22 purchase. And of course, you recognize that as imperial measure. Now, it's very important that we understand what the term is now the proprietor of an estate in fee simple means. If we're going to get to the bottom of who, in fact, own the structures that were destroyed and the structures that remain on the land. The first thing we're going to do is to look at the meaning of the word proprietor. A proprietor is the legal owner of a business, store, hotel, or piece of land. The word often refers to someone who runs a small shop or a single owner business. There are three key factors in being a proprietor. First of all, the proprietor is the owner. They hold the title and legal rights to the property or company. The next key factor about a proprietor is that them is the boss. And the boss makes all the choices and runs the daily work. That's the boss. And another thing is that after them invest, the profits and all the risk is to them. They keep all the money made, but must also pay all the debts. And of course, what they forget to put was that they must also pay the taxes if taxes happen to be due on the property that they own. So now we know what a proprietor is. We're going to now look at what a proprietor in fee simple means. And it says that a proprietor in fee simple is the legal owner of a real estate, land, who holds the maximum, most absolute, and permanent degree of ownership possible under common law, often referred to as outright or freehold ownership. And freehold simply means that there is no restriction on the time that they own the property for. So once you own the property, you own it until you either die, sell it, or gift it to somebody else. That is what that means. Let me read that again. Often referred to as outright or freehold ownership, this title means the person owns, listen to this, both the land and any structures on it indefinitely, with no expiration date or time limit. So your sister, now we're getting somewhere. Now we need to know what they mean by any structures on it indefinitely. And for that, we need to know what the status is of a board structure that is not intended to be permanent and a concrete structure that is, and how they are treated under the law. And remember, it's all about the law. So we're looking at now at what they meant by when them say own the land and the structures that are on it. And everything depends on whether or not the structures on the land are intended to be permanent or temporary. So it says here, if a house is built with the explicit intention and physical design to be removed at a later date, its legal status shifts from a permanent fixture to a chattel or movable personal property. In Caribbean and common law property traditions, structures of this nature are frequently recognized as chattel houses, traditionally wooden dwellings resting on blocks, stilts, or skids, rather than sunk into a deep concrete foundation. So it is obvious that the people in Westmoreland, they understand the law. So when they're leasing land, what they do, they build homes made of board houses that they can take up and move, go somewhere else if the lease expire on that particular land. So needless to say, it is the landlord who owns the land, but it is the tenant who owns the board house that he constructed. So when it comes to Cooper's Pen properties now, all of those board houses on the land are actually owned by the persons who build them, provided that those board structures were not set within a concrete foundation on the property. And therefore, I suppose it may be considered fixed. But if they are not, I would imagine they can pick them up and go elsewhere with them, or for them. Now, what we want to find out now is what is the status of someone who builds concrete on a property that is not their own. If a tenant or occupier builds a permanent concrete house on land they do not own and are later required to vacate, the concrete house legally belongs to the landowner, not the person who built it. Why the landowner owns the house? The legal maxim under property law, the ancient Latin maxim, I'm not going to try to pronounce it, but what it means in English is whatever is affixed to the soil belongs to the soil. I sincerely hope we can get this message out to every Jamaican. These are not things that we learn in school. We have to learn by and by as we go on. But whatever it is and whatever step we're going to make, we must know what the law is that pertains to it. And when it comes to property, investing into real estate is probably going to be the biggest investment you're likely to make in your entire life. So you see, those persons that have concrete or any kind of structure were fastened down upon the ground, once them build it, it no longer belongs to them. It belongs to the person who owns the land. So when Mark Golding said that they want to restore the lives, the households who had their homes destroyed yesterday, to the extent that the homes were fixed to the ground, those homes no longer belong to them. And he knows it or supposed to because he's an attorney at law. That's why they go to school and study law. So if he knows that this is true, why then did he go and tell the people that these were their homes? What is he up to? Is he trying to stir you up? Trying to give you the impression that he, big lawyer, supposed to know what I'm talking about. And if him tell you that these structures being knocked down are your homes, how do you feel about that? That make you angry. You feel now that your rights are being trampled on and you need to defend it. Laboring under the false impression, you feel now that you have a right to go there and go on bad. I am wondering if that is what his intent is, to stir you up to anger, to start to behave badly, get yourself in a problem and make the government look bad. So based upon what I have observed, I don't see any reason to believe that they went there to help. If anything, your utterances may have the opposite effect of stirring up the people to make trouble that is only going to bring more problems for themselves and not a solution. Now Mark Golding is saying that this government must find a solution. In other words, what he's admitting is that apart from trying to compulsory purchase the property which failed, there was no other solution that they could come up with, and he has no solution himself.
The matter of lands falls directly under the portfolio of the Prime Minister as Minister of Economic Growth and Infrastructure Development. All of the land agencies of government fall under him. So he is in a position to expedite a solution to this crisis. And I'm calling on him to do so. Identify an appropriate location and make the necessary investments so that the people can be restored. That's the first issue.
It has been 14 years and he was Minister of Justice in the previous administration from 2012 until 2016. And they were unable to find a solution, which suggests that there isn't. He spoke about identifying a property. Well, did the previous administration try to identify a property? And if they did, wouldn't we have heard what property that was? So there was no property that was identified in the previous administration either. And the big question is why?
The second issue is the other households who are in jeopardy because the demolition was not complete yesterday and they have expressed an intention to return to complete it. Now, while the Cooper's Pen property has sections of it with formal titled houses, there are another section which has very well established homes, concrete structures, properly built, but are in jeopardy because they don't have title for that. The question is what is going to happen to them? And I would call on the government immediately to begin a process of negotiation on their behalf to try and find a solution.
So there you go. Evidence that Mark Golding doesn't care about you. If he knows that what is required is negotiation, him not should have run go do it. Him should not ask the government to do it. Him should want to be the hero to go and solve the problem for you, wouldn't you think? He's a commercial lawyer, and he'll have you believe him is a big, big commercial lawyer in Jamaica. And he is not the one that is going to sit down and negotiate on your behalf. No. Let's forget him. Waste of time, that. All right. So I call you here because I have a few suggestions to you, and I need you to listen to me very carefully. Pause the video for as often as you like and write down everything that I tell you. And don't forget to do exactly as I suggest. If you want to add to it, fine, but do exactly as I suggest. Now, what you want to do, bearing in mind that he has a larger property, and he's concerned that whatever in bill on that property is going to be downgraded in terms of value based upon the surrounding area and what structures are put up. So the first thing you want to do is to impress on them that the structure that you have there is not going to bring down the property value of whatever it is that you put on the main property. So that is the first thing. So what you're going to do, you're going to take a photograph of your house, the outside, the inside, and you're going to take a picture of the proximity to the road. You can even get a map to show where your particular house is in relation to the main road so you can see, right? The next thing you want to do is you want to take a picture of yourself and your family. You are now attempting to appeal to his compassion, and men can be very compassionate. No care how them stubborn and go on like them tough. Yes, man, them very soft-hearted. Believe me, them softer than a woman. But if this happens to fall in the hands of a lady, then you know you stand a good chance of getting through. Yes. So take a picture of yourself and your family. The next thing I suggest you do is that you write a short letter. Don't make it so short that you miss out on all the things that you need to say, but it should be a 10-page letter or a 4-page letter. Just make it maybe about 2 or 3 paragraphs. And what you're going to do, because he must be very angry. So you're going to say, I know you must be very angry because, you know, you guys cost the man a whole heap of money and a whole heap of grief. So you know he's angry and you apologize. You're very sorry. What you did was wrong. And then maybe you'd like to explain, because I can't believe that you would have done that without having some reason. Crazy though it may be. So tell him your reason. And make him know you made a mistake. Make him know the size of the house. And that it would be a pity to destroy something as beautiful as that if it is beautiful. And he would probably agree with you. So you want to say that to him. And having recognized that he must be angry because of all the pain and suffering that he must have felt, it must be hard for him to, to do what he's doing. Think about it. So having apologized and say you're sorry and you made a mistake. After you do all of that, the next thing you're going to do, you're going to get a measure of the perimeter of the property that you have fenced round or you lay claim to. You want to measure the frontage, and you're going to measure the 2 lines on the side and the back. And if you're able to, you can do an estimation of the measurement. If you don't know if you do it, left it alone, him will do it. And ask him, please, you're just begging him to sell you that piece of land, right, that you're on. Tell him, and this is the kicker, after you do all of that, you're then going to say to him that you are prepared to pay for the surveying of the land, for the valuation of the land. If he's prepared to sell it to you, you're prepared to pay it. You're prepared to pay the transfer tax. You're prepared to pay the stamp duty on the property, all of it, right? Transfer tax is usually paid by the owner. You're telling him that you're prepared to pay that. You're putting like icing on the cake. Or now he might think about it and say, okay, so me not have to pay that. After me all spend all them well for money upon legal fees, me not have to pay all them same thing there. Well, he may think about it now. Him look on your property and him say him not going to downgrade his, and you're offering to pay the transfer tax, offering to pay the surveyor to survey the land, offering to do the valuation. Him have to think about it now. And then what you don't do in this letter that you send to him, do not offer to pay his attorney. Wait, because it's bound to occur to him if he's amenable to sell you the land, he might want you to pay that too. Once him write to you and tell you that if you're prepared to pay his attorney's fee, it's a go. Then now you can jump up and down and start dance and yeah man, you can keep a party because that is almost a yes. Not reached there yet, but it's almost a yes. All you have to do is ask him what that might cost. Don't tell him, yeah man. No, ask him what might that cost, and then he will give you an idea. And then now you think you wait 2 days. Never do anything right away, When you negotiate it, never come right away and do something. Wait 2 days and you say yes. And you put it in writing and you say that you are prepared to pay this and pay that. In those circumstances now, you may want an attorney to draft that up. But the letter that you're sending to him must not come from an attorney. It must come from you. There are other squatters in the area in the same position as you, the ones that have nice buildings that will also carry off his property. You may want to go to them and tell them what you're planning. And if they're in agreement and they are prepared to pay the survey and all them something for them land, you can make them all sign that letter. But they must do exactly what I am suggesting that you do. You can, they should give a photo of the premises, the perimeter measurement, the front and the 2 lines fence on the side and the one around the back. And they must take a photograph of themselves and their family and promise to pay the things that you say you're going to pay. Right? Now, if he agrees to sell you guys the land, what you then do is get your attorney to draft a letter to his attorney. It will be a letter of undertaking of all the things that you promised to do, and you must do it. Otherwise, the deal will fall through. You get me? I believe that may go a far way to persuading the company to sell you guys the lands that you are on. I would suggest that you don't get politicians involved in your business anymore, because that will almost look like them bullying. That was the mistake that Portia probably made when she tried to force him to sell, and it was not in her mind too. So see if you can do that. For the other people, the poor people, then board structure and so on. Government will have to do something for them, but you have to do something about where you and your neighbors. And remember, it is very, very important that all of you get together and write this letter. Trust me when I tell you, you are better off going as a group. So get all of the other persons in the area with the same kind of similar housing to sign that letter and send to the owner. I believe that this will go a far way in helping you. If you get through, it is very likely that the owner will not want this to get around. He may ask you not to say anything to anybody. You're going to have to keep quiet. You can't go to the press. You can't pinch anybody and say anything to them. And if you have a missus and the missus not involved, do not tell the missus either until everything is settled and you have your title in hand, or in any event, you have your agreement for sale, right, of the property. And this is what I would suggest. Try that and see how it works. Good luck to you all.